everyone. This is Ben Sens from Boss Construction. We're over here in Lauderdale Harbor with Jonathan Keith, JK, Compass Realty. What's up?
Hey guys, thanks for having us. Ben, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
This is an amazing house to be in.
Yep, no, this is a fantastic property. Built in 2017. You want me to give a little stats on the property, Ben?
You know what? We always get to talk about amazing properties.
Right, so the key to this property is the fact that the location right off the bat is the key pinnacle point to be in here in Fort Lauderdale. So the Lauderdale Yacht Club is probably about a good 5 or 6 blocks just due east of this property. You've got all the shops on 17th, another 6 blocks due south, and then you've got downtown just less than not even a mile due north.
So you're in the middle.
So you're literally this property. You get a golf cart, and you can pretty much not ever. You don't really have to ever get in a car again once you're in. The airport's not that far, so it's ideal. So you have the port, you have the airport, you have downtown, you've got yachting, you've got everything right here. This is right in the middle of it. So built in 2017, this property actually is a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, right around 2,100 square feet. It's got a double car garage, metal roof. You could see the designing that was done was impeccable. I actually had one of my designers come in, Gerald Tidswell, and he really did an amazing job putting all the integral pieces to this property to make sure it pops.
How long did this take him to design like this?
He had been working on this since they purchased it, so I'm going to say that they've got probably at least a good, I think he's at least a good 4-month project, defining and detailing the property.
And how are you capturing? I mean, we've discussed this. Going back a whole year, you and your team, how are you guys capturing these amazing residential and commercial listings?
I think the key factor is really where we perform is based on past performance, right? And the fact that we are a well-known team that takes inventory and we get the job done with the mega amount of marketing. We don't just depend on the MLS to actually find and chase those buyers down.
Well, you're part-timers. And
right. We have a serious marketing strategy put together that's global. And I actually work with multiple third-party digital media companies to put us in a position to make sure that all of our listings are out, aggressively getting the traffic, the clicks, the hits. It's outside of just social media and Facebook. It's also out to like 250 other realtor associations around the world. A lot of people don't realize that. And one of the main reasons I tie in with the Miami Association of Realtors is the fact that we know that the international game is still buying, even if they're struggling getting in. We just had a closing, Ben. This is crazy. Yeah. We just had a closing with a buyer who was from Lithuania in Pompano. The buyer fell in love with our house, 360 Southeast 12th Avenue.
Wow.
We never met the buyer. The seller's in Canada. He couldn't come in either due to COVID restrictions, right? So the buyer and seller never met each other. The buyer never saw the property other than digitally. And I worked with the buyer's attorney out of California to finalize the whole transaction. So it was literally physically sight unseen through the entire process. And so we're still seeing international, when people are like, well, how's international buying? They're buying sight unseen, and they're utilizing all the marketing services that we provide, whether it's the Matterport 3D or whether it's the videos, whether it's FaceTime or the pictures that are in place or the walkthroughs. There's a substantial amount of things that we can do to expose a property where we have pretty much everything in line, aligning them with the inspection company. Our inspector and our inspection company has a guarantee, so if there's anything, so finally when this breaks through and the buyers are actually able to come in and look at the properties that they bought, there's still a warranty on the inspection services that we had done, where the inspector has to address if there's any issue that he missed.
Keeping buyers and sellers happy.
Absolutely. We want to be we want to support the property and position the buyers, no matter where they are around the world when they're buying, to ensure that they're buying in the best of care and due diligence at hand.
So people are relocating here from the Northeast. They're going to be, as government and economic tensions and everything, they're going to be relocating. We're going to see an influx of people from South American countries just all coming here.
It's you know, we saw
exciting.
It was kind of like the slingshot, Ben, and we had talked about it during when COVID hit and how this was going to affect. We didn't know how this was going to play out, and we had talked about slingshotting. We talked about pent-up demand, and now we're seeing where people are so adamant about finding their perfect home, just in case they're in this situation, however long this lasts, and in case this reoccurs again, they're lined up with exactly what they're going to be, what their dream home.
I don't hear anything negative really coming out of the real estate market or the realtor associations. And if you hear anything negative about real estate, you basically the stuff we heard before COVID, the luxury market, we built too many $3 million condos and excessive inventory, but things like this, single family homes in this area, boom.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, this house is impeccable, and it's, you know, I mean, you could literally eat off the floors here. I mean,
I have.
It's great. She just had a cleaning company come in. 4 girls just tore into this house and literally, you know, cleaned it from.
So this is a second home for this seller.
This is a second home for this owner, and they're in a situation where, you know, they've got restaurants up north, and they can't come down and get into a quarantine position, whether they're going back up or whether they're allowed back up.
Sure.
They said, you know what, maybe it's time to go ahead and move on, and then they'll reposition. They're looking at other properties as it stands. So
that's phenomenal.
But yeah, it's a very unique game that's going on right now. Some of it's untold, and we don't know how it's going to unfold. We're going to have to see it firsthand.
Do you think like interest rates are going to continue to stay low and other incentives?
You know what we're seeing?
To buy investment and on the commercial side, I know you deal with.
You see, that's like the standard. You know, we just, you know, I've got to tell you, I just took some commercial listings last week, and we've gotten a lot of traffic on it. As a matter of fact, we have a guy, I got a call over the weekend. The gentleman owns a strip next to the commercial project that I have, and what he's doing is he's trying to reconfigure and redefine what, if he buys my 2 office buildings and he adds his strip center to it, what that's going to be like. And you know, fortunately, you know, I've been you know, in Florida for over 20 years now, so you know, the key for me is defining. I mean, I've been in Florida. I take that back. I've been in Florida since 1979. Right? So figuring out. So we're 40 years in Florida. I've seen a lot of different purposing and repurposing of different businesses and overall commercial buildings. And this was a perfect example.
And you have to have that vision.
Perfect example of a gentleman that called me over the weekend that says he wants these 2 buildings. He's like, well, I haven't defined exactly what I want out of that. And I expressed to him, well, he had to take a look at a building purpose that is the exact space that he would be purchasing, including his retail spot. And they made they made a pizza shop, a pizza shop, an ice cream parlor, a candy shop, a bird section.
Sounds like my type of place.
Yeah, so like everybody that's attracted can actually come. And a cafe. So it's like a win-win for the entire family, and I think that that's what Fort Lauderdale needs.
Yeah.
He loved the idea and being able to express and expose those different successful businesses that have happened around the state, and getting that kind of feedback on something that might possibly happen off of Northeast 4th Avenue is really cool.
That's awesome. I mean, I've seen those things up north where I live in Delray. Like
it's a one-stop shop for kids and family.
It's like a Jackson's ice cream and a pizza parlor.
Right, exactly.
And they have mining and duck races, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually mentioned, you know, Jackson's has that little strip. Can you imagine if Jackson's actually owned that larger space?
They could make an entertainment complex like Desert.
That was actually for sale about 10 years ago. I actually had a buyer for it, and they were
really?
Yeah, not Jackson's, but the actual mall next to it. Yeah.
I think what's very interesting is, you know, as I moved out, you live out east, I moved out west. I kind of regret it a lot, but I found these things more located out west, I guess due to the cost of renting spaces or real estate.
Yeah.
Some of these things aren't as sustainable unless you have the vision like you do, and you see opportunities. For example, this might be a great opportunity for this business, and and the real estate investment is there.
Right.
So people might see different, like you were saying, with repurposing.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. I mean, there's a true difference between the entertainment and the housing west when it comes to, aligning and comparing to east. And I think, the east typical mentality that I run into are, those that want to take advantage and be near the beach, and they're willing to suffice maybe having a smaller house or lower ceilings. This is kind of like a win-win.
Lower ceilings, these are higher ceilings.
Lauderdale Harbor is right here off of 17th Street, and you're right over the bridge and you're on the beach. Yeah, these are 13-foot ceilings here. Your typical, eastern home is 8.5-foot ceilings. So, there are sacrifices that you want to make. I've always loved being east.
And you boat and you fish, and
we definitely make the best of being where we're at. There's a reason why I love Coral Ridge. I have a lot of some of my core people in the county live in Coral Ridge, and I spend a lot of time with them. And I tell you what, there is nothing like, this is the one thing I've realized more so than ever of being in Fort Lauderdale for 20 years, is literally being near your friends. And as a matter of fact, here's what's funny, is I know that Jay Granary is actually in contract for a house 2 streets away from mine. So
really?
It's even going to get better if he finalizes the deal. Yeah.
You guys are bike buddies, and Jay's a member of the team.
He's a character,
we know Dan and Britt, everyone, phenomenal. Barbara, phenomenal.
Yep.
That's awesome. And so, again, the only thing that I regret, because we moved from Aventura out west, again, I regret not living out east, but I'm happy I don't live in a condo anymore with this COVID situation. So I think that's brought, especially with the young kids, the COVID, getting in the elevators, things like that. But we're taking our kids out, but we're doing it smart. Right. We're doing it protected,
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the buildings have recognized that, hey, this is an issue with being
one person in an elevator.
We're seeing that. I've got some luxury condos in place right now where they're like, if somebody's in the elevator and we get in to go show, you're not getting in the elevator. And it's just being conscientious about what's going on. I've been given a hard time about wearing a mask in different places, and then I'm like, well, listen, I'm not wearing it for me. I'm wearing it for you.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be on the hook. I had somebody who was out showing, and I had gloves on. They're like, dude, you had to go that far? I'm like, well, to be honest with you, I didn't have to go far at all, because if I get COVID, I have a weird feeling I'll be just fine. I was concerned about you.
No, but I mean, even you and I here, we're apart. The cleaning ladies just left. We're practicing, very well.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we actually came to 1235 Southeast 13th Terrace, we had 4 cleaning ladies, and they all had masks on. And right off the bat, they wanted to kind of figure out what I was doing because the house is vacant, and they weren't sure who I was. And I explained it to them, but just keeping our distance. I know we had talked about going up north, and I had called one of the places up in St. Augustine, and they were giving us a lowdown on how things are being played. And they're like, listen, if you feel like you aren't capable of being or social distancing yourself, then you should wear a mask.
Sure.
So it's just it's interesting on how this is all.
We know things are changing on a weekly basis, but again, your outdoor bike rides. There are things that we could do far away. There are things we could do outdoors. We could meet clients at Starbucks outdoors. Again, do things with very little risk, if any risk at all.
Yeah, we should. Did you bring your measuring tape? Is your digital measuring tape?
I brought my digital measuring tape.
Can it figure out our distance? I think we're within check on CDC.
We are 5'10", my height away from each other. That is where we're at right now.
That's after Ben pushed the seat back a couple of feet.
That's right. It's like bowling. I kind of got away from the line.
But the key to it, seriously, is I got to tell you the funny part about it. Well, not the funny part, but I mean it's serious.
Sure.
It's serious. We're seeing. Obviously, there's an uptick factor here where we're concerned, and I just try to be conscious of everybody's safety.
Respectful, conscious. The things that we normally practice in our daily life, how we treat our clients, friends, and family, because every family is going to essentially do what's best for them. And you know, I could say, for example, my wife, you know, it's hard to fight her to say, well, I want to go away, and we're going to go away in a place where other people are spraying down things and you know, bringing in their own linens, and they're doing things safe. So everyone's going to, you know, do different things, and a lot of my viewers are going to like that I'm saying this. You shouldn't judge. You shouldn't judge. You should just be more accepting and not say, well, I'm doing this, so you know.
You can't, I mean, and you can't stop it. Yeah, you can't stop, you know, people are going to, you know, gauge each other for what their considerations are. You know, one of the things that I actually was called out on the other day, well, it was, what's your plan, right? What's your plan if you get COVID? And how that's going to play out in the family. So as an example, you know, if you get COVID, you know, and you were out in the field and somehow or another you got it, and how does that work out with the family, you know? And where does that go? Because I haven't really addressed that. You know, I have a feeling that Tracy will probably put me out on the street.
In the garage.
Right, I'm in the garage and I'm bringing in an AC unit of my own and not connecting to the house.
About 3 months ago, I'm not joking, I was talking with my neighbor across the street. We were sharing a little bit of rum. He's from Puerto Rico, and my wife didn't let me back in the house. She's like, "There, you didn't have to stand," you know. And again, you know, so everyone has a different level of sensitivity here, and with the kids, we don't know if the kids are going to go back to school, exactly what we're going to do again, but all we know is that we need to do what we need to do to protect ourselves. What do you think? And I like to refer to you as like the local Fort Lauderdale connoisseur, because when I think of East Fort Lauderdale, I think of you, I think of your business, I think of seeing you out on bus benches. Do you think the city's just going to start to, like Miami Beach, like police exactly what they're trying to do? Because again, the thing is, if we shut down businesses one other time, I don't think that they'll reopen. Like, not for us, like consultants, real estate professionals, but for your restaurateurs, for your different people.
Well,
what do you think's going to happen?
It's funny. I was just talking to, you know, a restaurateur, and you know what she basically said is they're a pilot. You know, they're basically the captain of, you know, sanitary means and safety, and if they can't pilot their own business, right, then they shouldn't be open.
Sure.
Am I in agreement with what the city has done as far as code violations and all that? 100%. I think that it was good to actually see the city step up and not tolerate unsafe measures for those who don't want to follow.
These are never things that our local governments have even thought about policing. Again, in code enforcement and police, especially more going back to code enforcement, they enforce municipal ordinances, things that...
I think it's wrong, because, you know, the key is that we're trying to, like, you know, purport this issue, and now we're going into 4th of July and the beaches are going to be closed. And a lot of that relates back to what our behavioral game was when we were social distancing, and when we were taking the safety measures that we should have been taking by wearing masks, and that wasn't happening. So we're continuing to stretch out. We missed St. Patty's Day. That got shut down, and then, you know,
that's not funny, but I was just thinking, I saw a little post on a mom's group, and one of the moms said, Halloween falls on a Saturday night, there's a full moon, and you people not out there practicing social distancing, don't mess with my Halloween. Because that's a thing, you know, everything we do, we're wired like that.
How do we have the kids go door to door? That ain't happening, you know. So
and then when things were in safe door to door, we had the kids go in malls. And things like that, controlled environments.
I mean, these are big issues, and then it gets deeper, Ben. It gets deeper into, you know, when you go from like your permitting position, which I love to hear about, and then we're getting into where, you know, we've got a lot of moms fighting for kids to go back to school as a 5-day option, right? And there's a lot of people out there that are saying, hey, listen, I'm good with the 2 days. There's a lot of people saying, well, if it's 2 days, right, well, the other 3 days the kids are going to be at a daycare that may or may not be, following the CDC procedures, or even if they did follow
I think they just have to lay out choices for people, and they're not going to build consensus. Meaning everyone wants to say they're not going to build consensus on one choice. So again, lay out 3 choices and handle it that way. I mean, I regret right now. I wished I make fun of all my friends who own an RV trailer. I wish I had a beautiful pool like this in the back of my house instead of going to my community pool. Because all west is HOAs and all these communities. So
they talked about that. That's been like a big scenario for a lot of the west coming east and going direct, having their own pool.
Sure.
Instead, some of the communities. So there's some western communities.
I've been taking Olivia and Harley out east every day. We live in West Boca, whether it's to, again, Highland Beach, Delray, all these different places. We went on the West Coast this weekend. It was phenomenal. But I mean, again, people are going to migrate to where there's opportunity, and that's how it's always been. And, we have families, young families.
100%, yeah. So what's happening with the permit situation for you? I kind of want to reverse the tables a little bit.
Sure.
So are they open? Is the city of Fort Lauderdale open to handle the permitting?
All of the cities are open. They're just, even through this whole thing, I mean, I remember myself going to Pompano in April. They're just operating in different capacities. If the cities ended up closing, then we couldn't have lien searches and we couldn't close on mortgages and transactions. So the bottom line is the cities are open. They're operating in different capacities. Actually, if you want to get something permitted, probably now's the time, because they're being very lenient. And I kind of say that half joking and half seriously. They're using engineers' letters. They're using different methods. I know, for example, the city of Sunrise and Coral Springs out west, these cities are not allowing interior residential inspections. They're only allowing commercial. So every city and inspector, and again, keep in mind, a lot of these building code inspectors, they're older men, older women, older people.
And they can't get out there.
And they can't get out there. So, but again, all these cities, the code enforcement, the building, the municipal services, all these people have remained open. And I've actually seen, since these guys are working from home, even though I hear the dog in the background, I get so much of a better level of service. I get applications, change of contractors, turned around the next day or two.
See, this is the first time that I've actually seen this subject opened up and addressed actually out in the open forum.
I appreciate
any city sites or any of that. So
no, but I mean, and even Fort Lauderdale, they, right before the pandemic hit, they switched to Acela, a new permitting software. But again, it's really phenomenal. And number one, I don't need. The municipal employees, they're a lot more calm because they don't have to deal with the flood of the public. So again, working with people on phone, setting up, FaceTime. I had an inspector that said, let's do a video chat for this inspection. Show me all the outlets are grounded and protected. So it's been a really interesting time, and a lot of our clients are refining. So all these commercial properties you talk about, this is that time.
It comes up. And let me tell them, Ben does a lot of my, he handles a lot of my permitting issues, whether it's, we've had this whole, the alarm permit has always been the biggest bear. Those of you know, I used to own an alarm company 20 years ago.
When they were hardwired?
When they were hardwired. I always, listen, when I installed, you would never see a wire, ever, and now they're wireless and still doing false alarming all the time. So, so the alarm, what are like some of the stigmas? You got the alarm permit that was 20 years old that shows up on title and you can't close. What else? Fence is another one.
The alarms, fences, windows, and doors. The one thing that I find the most difficult is if the city will close out the alarm permit administratively, that's great. But for example, I get called into areas of Miami-Dade County when the electrical inspector wants to come out to verify why the bars, the magnetic bars you see on the window have been removed, or the door. So that's a very interesting question. Those are very common permits, but what I have to look out for is my clients and property owners and transactions. So I have to make sure there's nothing in the surrounding that hasn't been permitted that would affect that. So it's kind of like a holistic approach. If I only concentrate, you know, I've seen a lot of real estate professionals, especially when I was working in the Weston building department. If you focus on the one thing, closing the transaction, closing the permit, trying to facilitate everything for your client, sometimes you're going to miss the broader approach of not knowing the process. So having known the process and do what I do, and you know, for your team,
30 plus cities here in Broward County.
And every one of them is different. And what's very interesting is the resolution is different. It's constantly changing.
How about the tiki huts?
The tiki
huts come up all the time.
Those are
hold on. So I don't know if you guys knew, but I was on the City of Fort Lauderdale Code Enforcement Board. So it was very interesting. I saw the tiki hut game come up all the time, and so yeah. What did you run into with the tiki?
So there's an exemption if it's built by an Indian tribe, and it's certified, built by the Seminole Tribe of Florida. Then they're exempt from the Florida Building Code. So there's this small exemption, but what I've seen is a lot of people, they have cheeky huts or tiki. They put electric on them. Sometimes I've seen
TVs,
them. I've seen them create
bedrooms.
I've seen them create more zoning problems, meaning they're in the setbacks of the property, or you know. But again, cities notoriously they regulate zoning, landscaping, lot setbacks. That's with our commercial properties. You know, you call me sometimes and say, "Hey Ben, can this tenant actually operate in this space?" This is what the prospective buyer wants to use. So, you know, due diligence is very important before we. But yeah, I mean, all of these things are really crucial to transactions.
Well, it's great having you as a resource, and
I love it.
Ben's such an amazing. I tell you, when it comes to knowledge and a resource of knowledge, specifically geared towards construction and permitting and all that, he has focused his line of business specifically to handle these hotbed issues of permitting, and it helps us navigate and close, because we've had, I mean, I have other agents that I hear about out in the business that struggle getting deals closed where the deal actually goes awry because they weren't able to overcome, they didn't have a resource like Ben to fix the permitting and overcome the
and again, it's more than the expediting of the permit, it's understanding everything and then getting it to that closing table. And then dealing with the cities and their evolving things like we discussed. But and that's how I think that's how we originally met. And then since then, you know, we've done docks and pilings and all this.
That's a great one. I remember that.
In Pompano,
we were in a real weird situation. I had a house where the dock was pretty much trashed. It was basically floating one board at a time every other day, right, floating away. And so the buyer knew that the dock was an issue, and they were willing. They already had plans on replacing the dock. But we couldn't close the permit without replacing the dock. But the seller didn't want to open a permit to create the whole challenge of, you know, now figuring out who was paying for it and all that.
And again, that's something that, again, you might not want to call the city out to attempt to close.
Right. And now the city, not only do we have an open permit for a dock that's floating away, now we have a code violation because we called the city to figure it out, and we were actually able to close with the open permit and work through the buyer coming in and now defining what their new dock and all that. So that worked out.
So
we needed you.
Thank you. And closing,
$1 million deal that was and $1 million, $1 million, right? The seller needed to move. They relocated. They needed Ben. They needed me to come in and get this done. The buyer, you know what? The buyer just wanted the house. The buyer wanted to move their family. They had already sold their home, so they were squeezed. And without Ben's resources and capabilities to help me overcome what was on the table, we would have had problems closing. There was a high probability, there was a strong possibility it wouldn't close.
And again, I get this all the time. Calling a dock company or someone, they're looking to rebuild docks.
Right.
They're not looking to be owner's reps. They're not looking out for the transaction. Yeah. So that's what's phenomenal.
It's funny. Owner's rep just came up the other day. I was dealing with, I had a family that we actually went into contract in Boca, and they were looking to have somebody just help them facilitate the design.
Lori Spector, I think she's with Compass in your office.
Love Lori, great realtor.
She called me for a very similar situation in regards to babysitting the contractor, find out the right things to do with the city. Again, I do that all the time.
Okay,
and
what do you usually run? Is that usually like a flat fee on top? So you do like a net number, whatever the cost is, and the percentage on it?
What I normally do, and I like to tell people to be fair, is I like to give a free consultation. I like to look at what the permitting, what the scope of work, meet the client, find out, because in all of these situations, there's different levels of problems or scopes or babysitting. So find out exactly what the client needs from me, and then come up with a flat fee type of price from there.
I think that that's huge, because the big thing is now, even with COVID where people have more time, guess what they want to spend their time with? Their family, not arguing with the GC and the contractors, finding out whether they've got the work, whether they're doing the work, whether they're showing up to do the work, and especially down in South Florida, the workmanship can get challenging, and the contractors, they act up, and having an additional support line is a big factor.
I've gotten brought in by condo associations, different people who are hiring contractors for large common areas, and the board says, the property management company, the real estate attorney says, hey, I want you to be here, the eyes and ears. I want you to report to the board. Again, these are voluntary people. A lot of them have jobs themselves. So again, these are very high ticket items that we have to make sure are done correctly.
What's the funkiest code violation issue you've ever dealt with where you're like, this is beyond your imagination? Can you recall that one?
I was going into Miami Gardens to do a reoccupancy inspection.
Oh boy! And you guys know in Miami, my God, if it's like a 3-bedroom, it's a 12-bedroom.
I mean, not only was it a 12-bedroom, but there was, I'm talking about a lot of new sneakers in the house. So the house was being stored for something. People were living in the house.
Gotcha.
And it was, I mean, just to bring this house into compliance and figure out, that was, I mean, there must have been, my brother would be in awe. There must have been $2 million of Jordans and Nikes in there and things like that. This was a vacant and abandoned property. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But we come across a lot of stuff. You and I going to properties, dealing.
I remember I had probably the weirdest deal I ever had was probably an estate sale. And it was in Hollywood, and it was a low-end property, but the family needed to get it situated so they could finalize their estate. And I had went out there, and there was a group of the neighbors were digging holes in the back of the house. I'm like, well, what's going on? Because I kind of needed to take control of the property to start getting things put together, and they're like, well, we're digging holes for the cats. I'm like, what do you mean digging holes for the cats? They're like, yeah, we're helping the deceased homeowner with taking the cats that had passed away in the house, and they were digging holes for them in the back of the burial.
And this is something that you went to.
Wow. Oh yeah. So, and I hadn't gotten in the house yet, right? And I don't think that I think that I was kind of caught off guard as to what they were doing.
They didn't know who you were.
They didn't, and they didn't want to really get into detail with what was ahead of me, because I think they wanted me to feel their pain. So I ended up going in the house. I got attacked by fleas and ticks.
Oh my gosh.
And literally the fleas and ticks walked me out to my truck, and yeah, it was definitely a nasty nightmare.
That's something that will crawl on your skin.
But you know what? We do these things. We get into these situations all the time. As a matter of fact, I ran into
they're not always beautiful luxury.
No.
They're all types of situations.
That's right. And you know what? My main goal, more so than ever, is always represent the family involved and make sure they're in the best situation with whatever the market's prevailing and whatever the current status and situation of the market is. So, I mean, the market's going to create the valuation, right, of whether it's supply and demand. But then you get into situations where the market is relative towards a pandemic, like what we're dealing with. Whether, we had a mortgage crisis, we've had, hurricane crises, we've had, all kinds of different things that have happened to us. And I think that that's the main key, is being able to evolve around and understand and listen to that buyer or seller for their situation at hand. We deal with a lot of divorce situations. We deal with a lot of marital scenarios where people are coming together. As a matter of fact, I've got a family right now that really needed a 4-bedroom, and they had a certain budget. They were in a $500,000 budget in Boca out in West. And it is tough. In West Boca, it is tough to find a 4-bedroom in that 400 to 500 range, and we were able to nail it. Then, guess what? It didn't appraise, right? And then how do we structure that? Well, what we did was we decided to go in and have a 10-day inspection, and believe it or not, the inspection's not first. The appraisal's first, just in case there's any issues, because the seller didn't want to sell the 4-bedroom and have it aligned with a appraisal contingency. So instead, the buyers want the property, but they didn't want to be on the hook if it wasn't going to appraise. So we reversed the whole process. And not only that, we had, and here's what's interesting, is we had, and this is good for the realtors out there as well, is how is the communication broke down to the collaborating listing or buyer agent? And in this case, I was the buying agent collaborating with the seller agent, and she was the owner agent. So she wanted to know that somebody was actually going to work their tail off if she was going to accept their offer. And about 20 minutes ago,
she knew the biz.
She knew the biz, and she told me, Jonathan, I have a cash offer on the table, and I have 2 20% offers on the table. I'm working with 2 attorneys who are doing a 3% down, right? Well, what would you do if you were the seller? You would take the cash or 20%, right? But not when you have an agent that's not allowing the shenanigans, and she took our deal because she knew that I would help her navigate through the process, representing the buyers to make sure that everything was done right, everything was disclosed, and we would finalize the deal, and I had the capacity to do so. And if they run into problems, we have you come out. If we have plumbing issues, I have the remedies and we have the answers.
You have the stagers. The appraisal.
We have the answers to all the questions. That doesn't mean that they're fabricated answers.
No.
It means that we have the capabilities and capacity. I've got 20 years of getting the answers to all these concerns and problems, whether it's structural, whether it's permitting, whether it's plumbing, whether it's electrical, whether it's roof, whether it's the neighborhood, whether it's the amenities, whether it's the community in general. We have been here long enough to know all these things, and if we don't, we know where to go to get them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's huge.
And having that toolbox, knowing how to work with the mortgage professional, the real estate attorney, the title company, the third-party marketing, you circle back in the beginning of the interview, bringing all these things together is the flavor. It's really what it's your package.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key, is being able to have everything put together where it's not wondering how we handle this or wondering how we deal with this. We know what to do. And worst case scenario, we have the resources to be able to define the best decision. And I think that that's probably a great scenario to run through too, Ben, is where do agents stand in like COVID? The resourceful agents are the ones that are going to survive, the ones that are resilient, the ones that are tenacious,
survival of the fittest,
the ones that are supporting their buyers and sellers in the best to the best of their options. And I think that that's one of my main goals. Is like I had an appraisal issue with this one couple here, and I went back and said, hey, listen, I want you to know that we're going to help you with this whole appraisal if we get into another transaction, because clearly there was a big gap with valuation with where the seller was and where the buyers wanted to be at, and they just weren't able to come together, and we couldn't, there wasn't anything we could do other than just to move on and find another property. And the key factor is just being there for your buyers and sellers and being able to listen, being able to define what's ultimately in their best interest to facilitate the transaction. If clicking on Zillow or any of these other sites and finalizing a home was so easy, then we wouldn't be here, right?
Sure.
Which is what some of these companies would want, right?
Sure.
But I can tell you that from one transaction to the other, there is absolutely no 100% way, no way that a deal would have gone and would have been finalized with just that person and the computer. It would not have happened.
Everything isn't cookie cutter.
No.
Every situation is different.
Right. Absolutely, and we're seeing it, and
and unless you've dealt with the problems, you can't deal with. You hesitate, you lose time, you lose your deal.
Absolutely.
Your client doesn't get the best representation.
It's so funny. I see the biggest of professionals have the hardest time making their own specific decisions on their own home.
Oh, on the personal level.
Oh yeah.
Well, people call us all the time. They call us with problems.
Yeah.
And again, when it's when you're for example, the owner agent, or it's your person, it becomes if it's your tenant,
I have to tell you,
but I could tell you how to deal with someone else's tenant. But if it's your own property that you rent out and you're having an issue making that mortgage payment because you have a delinquent tenant.
That's so funny. I actually, I have to tell you, Ben, that I was actually at I had a listing opportunity right down the road here in Rio, and the seller showed up at the property. He hasn't listed it yet. We're talking. So yeah, any of your agents out there that are farming in Rio, you better hit it hard.
That's right. JK's there.
Sellers in there. So so I had a buyer for the seller that hasn't listed. The guy's taken 6 to 10 months to finally decide whether he wants to sell or not. He went through the sewer project that was happening here in Rio. Now we're in COVID, and
what did you refer? The Stewart project?
The sewer project. Yeah, the sewer project that was going on.
See, these are local things.
Right. So so finally, my buyer's like, well, hey, listen, I want to go see this property. I know that it's not on the market, and let me go out and take it. And so I have the buyer come out, and we meet with the seller, and then the seller's personally involved in the transaction. The buyer is like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to figure out just how motivated the seller is. This is not a good idea.
How to find out what their position is.
Right.
And again, that's something
the buyer, in my opinion, needs to make their decision, and they'll figure out what's best for them if the property works without the seller involved. It's just, the process was just really awkward, and the seller's just adamant about being there and being involved in whatever the decision making is for the buyer, and it's not good because the buyer is not interested in anything about what the seller has done or wants to do or what their motivation is. The buyer wants what they want. And getting a seller to understand that sometimes is very difficult, and that was a perfect example. Literally less than 3 or 4 blocks away here.
Wow.
And I've got another buyer, so I'm going to have a sit down with the seller before another buyer comes out, because I think that buyer at hand probably would have seen, if he hadn't have been in what the seller's doing, right? It's taking the mind of the buyer off of what the actual goal is, which is the house.
Sure.
Not what the seller is up to and what's going on with them. And a lot of people say, well, I just want to know everything that's going on so then I can make a decision. The challenge that comes in hand is the focus is off of what's right for the buyer, right? Is the house right for the buyer, instead of getting involved in wherever the seller is or where he's going or what he did. You know what I'm saying? And obviously we want to disclose and expose everything that the seller did. And I bring buyers and sellers together all the time on a regular basis. But when it comes to listing and having them involved, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's just funky. And I see it sometimes. I'm like, this wasn't a good idea. Because you know what?
Trying to think.
Buyers and sellers, they have two intents, and that intent's not always good to have together. Some feel like they're a deal maker, but you have like a deal maker that's a buyer, right? And then you have a strong seller. We got a problem. Because now it's, a buyer that's trying to get a great deal and he's willing to maybe meet in the middle, and you have a seller that says, I don't meet in the middle.
So you're navigating the meeting of the minds on those two people.
Right. The seller's just like, well, I gave you a price, I'm not negotiating. Now the buyer's saying, well, hey, wait a minute, I'm trying to work a deal, and if you give me a little more, I might consider executing. These two should not be talking. Because ultimately, we do have a buyer that wants to buy, and we have a seller that wants to sell. But now they're not getting along, and then a deal doesn't happen. A transaction doesn't happen. A sale of a home doesn't happen because of two personalities. When the ultimate goal is that the personalities weren't involved, right? And the house was the main focus, then we would have a transaction. There would be a closing.
And how did you start your team? I mean, the most phenomenal thing about your team is, how did you guys start your video? How did you guys start your shows and the things that you've been doing? Because this is something that sets you unique. Again, I do a lot of video in the business. I think we actually started around the same time. January 2019, I'm sitting at one of your first team meetings. Phenomenal. It was amazing. It inspired me, again, to go where I'm at as an entrepreneur. So you as an entrepreneur, how did you begin that? How did you engage everyone?
Well, I think a lot of people wonder what the secrets and successes are of Team JK, and I have to be openly direct. It's not just me. I think that the big factor for my mindset for the team is for everybody to be like me, right? And not everybody's going to have their own.
Just like me.
Right. Everybody's
Eminem.
Right. Exactly. The key is that everybody's going to have their own mindset, right? Their own world, but just have like a serious work ethic is number one. Have a collaborative mindset, and over the years in our business, the whole collaboration game was not okay. That was a problem. I mean, I'd been at several different brokerages where all the top producers did not collaborate with each other, and I thought,
and they could have done more business. Absolutely, and that was one of the main reasons I went to Compass, was that I felt like it was our chance as founding agents to create a new world now that the teams were evolving, and listing with a team, as going with a single agent up against a team, that's a tough move. So you're a team of top producers.
Right. So now, exactly.
You've got you got the infrastructure to create that.
I know how to be a top producer. I've known how to do that since day one, back in 2002 when I got into business. I mean, I was a top producer, and to be a top producer long term, it's 5 million in gross sales, right? 5 years consecutively in a row. I mean, I hit that right when I got into the business after the first 5 years.
And your team did like 80 million, 79 million in 2019?
Right, so we were 72 in 19.
72, sorry?
82 rolling from now to then, even with COVID in place.
Wow.
But it's okay. I mean, the numbers are the numbers, right? And that's the thing. I mean, we're in sales, and that's how no matter what business you're in, you're always going to be gauged toward sales. If you're whether you're a plumber, whether you're in real estate, whether you're an attorney.
Gauged towards magnetic and people, and bringing meaning if someone doesn't see the visions, or they're not a top producer, or they don't have the work ethic together,
well, they're going to be gone. Right. So I mean, we don't have a choice in our biz nor any other business if you're not. We kind of see it as a reflection of, if you're not 2 to 3-fold of being there in the business, then it's kind of pointless to not. You might as well find something else to do. And Team JK, right? Team JK, we've covered all the dynamics. We have the DNA laid out, where all they have to do, the DNA plan, is follow these procedures, and they will be amazing. We've built zero to heroes over and over and over again. That's why Team JK is a 30-agent aggressive team that does a substantial amount of marketing, that equates to business, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, you have a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, a landlord agent or a tenant agent. Whether we're working with investors, working with buyers, working with sellers, working with landlords, working with working with somebody who just wants to be a member of the community, we have that all built out.
Yeah.
Where our team not only does a lot of business, and this is what kind of trips me out a lot of times, where I see some of the top agents out there doing business, but they make no reflection or impact in our community. And that, if anything, if you were ever to ask me, right, and let's say you did.
You wouldn't know.
That really, really makes me wonder the decision making of some of the buyers and sellers on why they're choosing agents who don't even know whether they want to be in Fort Lauderdale, or don't even know from one deal to the next whether Broward County is truly their home.
These agents, they don't know neighborhood from neighborhood. They don't cycle along Fort Lauderdale. They don't know that there's a sewer project in this particular area that might affect the buyer in the future. I don't know. I know that I've talked to Jay Scheckman. I've talked to a bunch of my friends. I know that the city of Fort Lauderdale has so much infrastructure. Under infrastructure, they're still working. It's like Rome here. Right. They're still working on inventorying it. We don't know.
Right, and that's what's funny.
But again, if you're able to educate your buyer, if they say, well, what is the stormwater situation here? What is the drain here? And you could direct, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I could point you over to the city, and they can discuss. And that's something people need to know.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. We typically send out a 30-page report. Once we hone in on a property, I use the Realtors Property Resource, which is a national database to define all the ratings of the schools, the flood zones, the flood map, all the additional stuff that and obviously the sales that are in the area on top of. I usually do like a 3 to 4 step process for exposing the data on the properties once we pull it down and figure out that this is a property that a buyer is looking for. I just did it yesterday for the Boca family that was interested in a home, and
is some of the stuff on there, and some of the stuff is personally. You do like a hybrid, right?
Yeah. What I do is I try to conglomerate everything together so we can pick and choose all the different information that we can put together and collaborate on and figure out if this is the right transaction.
And your team, you have people who specialize in different neighborhoods and areas. I meet Jay on this side always. I meet Adam, and they're working together. It's phenomenal.
I would say that, and in our case, we try to niche out. Jay loves doing luxury. Adam loves doing multifamily. We've got a new agent, Chad, coming on. He's going to start doing a lot of multifamily as well, and a lot of wholesale games. So
that's cool.
Each person, we do a lot of commercial, which is big. I love commercial. So those of you out there who want a local, direct contact for somebody who has the capacity to do commercial listing and marketing, that's me.
And the vision.
We're tied to CoStar. We're tied to LoopNet. I've got I have the credentials for all those. I was working on getting my CCIM, so
that's awesome.
So commercial for me is that's where I enjoy. I enjoy that business. Yeah. We've done a lot of deals already in 2020 for.
No, but what's phenomenal is you enjoy retail, you enjoy the community, and it brings kind of all these things together.
Yeah, for the team, building the team and watching everybody collaborate, and the team doesn't go without struggle. And even during these times, we've seen where there's been some encouragement and discouragement, and watching the team engulf the discouragement to just focus on business and focus on our buyers and our sellers, our clients, I think has been, really interesting, because, there's a lot to tag on to. We can get involved in CNN, we can find out what's going on Fox, and we can just go awry on all the different community challenges that are taking place there.
I like challenges and local content within our community, and that's something that I try to provide. I've seen, your team provide. This is something that's going to actually matter.
Yeah, and I think that most importantly is we have to focus as realtors on what our job is. Our job is to find everybody a home.
Yeah.
And I am committed to it, whether it's a $90,000, and you guys can mark my words, whether it's a $90,000 transaction or a $9 million transaction, we treat everybody the same.
People ask me too, they say, you know, when I do some construction consulting or on commercial closeouts or residential closeouts, they say to me, hey Ben, how, you know, for me too, it's about the level of service and what you want to provide to the client. I don't care, you've called me to $2 million properties, you've called me to $200,000 properties. The process is the same, the things that we go to. And if you don't want that process, then you could go somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's our team structure as well. You know, our team structure is really geared towards making sure that whatever business comes in, we make sure that we do everything we can to put them in a home.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a leasing scenario, you know, I have agents that specifically focus on tenants. I have agents that specifically focus on landlords.
I've heard so many times, because I focused on property management a little bit, so many times where a renter's come to me, the agent who's listed my home and sold it for $550,
they don't want to do a rental.
They don't want to do a rental. I'm like, what?
We do it.
Where's your relationships?
Yeah. And,
you know, where's your? Does that sound like a professional to you?
And
You know,
you know what's funny is I use the rental game as leadership as well, because we have some team members that need to get out. They could see more neighborhoods. You know, as a realtor, you know, people come in and they get their license. Just because they have their license doesn't mean they know the integral details about Coral Ridge or Rio Vista or Lauderdale Harbors or Tarpon River or Shady Banks.
Even if you gave them a tour.
Yeah, I mean, and even if I gave them a list of all their subdivisions, they're not going to know that. And doing rentals, I remember back when I first started, Ben, doing rentals really educated me, because a lot of tenants, they wanted the Taj Mahal for $1,000, right? So by doing that,
Gotta be realistic.
I got a substantial amount of geo-targeted data and information that now that all reflects how we do business today when it comes to defining what's good and bad in different areas and where they want to be at, and sizing and bedrooms counts, and you know, whether this area has this that's more local, or
like, you know, you know, this 1955 built structure,
right?
You know, if your client's looking for a larger master bedroom and a walk-in closet, it's not going to have it.
Right.
Where's your washer dryer? It's not there. You know,
not unless they build a beautiful mansion like this here in the middle of Lauderdale Harbors.
You know that. You know your housing stock.
So
you know your local.
And
what's
I think
going
that's
on.
what's important, is realizing, you know, we see a lot of agents that come in and they're just like, well, just give me a buyer, or give me a seller. That's not how we do business. Everything is back to what I had mentioned to you before. Performance forward is based on performance in the past, right? And that's how we're able to do the amount of business we've done, is that everybody knows, I know for a fact, and this is where we're based out of, everybody knows out there in the community that when they do business with us, we get the job done. And the key behind getting that job done, even when the things are the most challenging, we have the capacity to define why it's challenging. Is it the marketing? Is it the pricing? Is it the bedrooms? Is it the roof's bad? Is it, we're able to define with our experience, right? And we're over 100 years of collaborative experience on the team, where we can really truly figure out exactly what the challenge is with the property, what the target is going to be for the sale of it, right? Who that buyer is probably going to be, you know, what area are they coming from? Are they moving up? Are they moving down? Are they having kids? Are they not having kids? You know, because I have some properties that specifically, this is a property that's probably not really, it's more of like a man cave.
Sure.
You know? Or I have a property that specifically, this is right at Bayview Elementary, so this is most likely the highest and best price. It's going to be geared towards a family wanting to be right near the school. And you know, that comes out, that opens up a whole nother game.
That's not generated, you could have RPR, I mean, that's not generated by a computer, that's generated by an individual who knows about the area.
Yeah, and you know, that opens up a whole nother game of, you know, what people are going to be doing. So we talked about different segments of why people are buying, right, or why people are selling. You know, now we've got the whole private school game in place, whether, you know, we're going to go back to school or not, and we're seeing a big uptick. And I'm telling you guys, this is a big one. People are not happy about paying private school money to homeschool their kids.
Sure.
And that's
They asked
a
me.
big issue. Big issue right now.
So we send Olivia to the JCC. Another person sends their kid to Pinecrest for camp. Pinecrest said, "Do you want to do virtual camp and pay the same amount?" Of course not.
Right.
But what I found,
that's a $25,000 check.
Yes.
You've got a right for your kid to say, stay at home and do virtual schooling.
but I think people, like you said, they're going to start to, in the next 12 to 18 months when we talk again, hopefully it's before then, we're always running around, it's going to be people who are investing more money in their houses, they're spending more time in their houses, they're going to build that cabana or cheeky hut by the pool.
The ideas are coming out of the woodwork on what they want to do.
And again, like I said earlier, I couldn't imagine living in a condo or a zero lot line home. So you're going to see people start to become innovative. They might build that rooftop deck. They might build stuff. You know, people are going to evolve. People are going to evolve. They have grandparents. They have parents at home. They have kids at home. So people are going to start to be more community centric or know their neighbors. You know, like I've got to meet so many of my neighbors the past 3 months, and get to spend so much good time with the family. But thank you so much for investing.
1235 Southeast 13th Terrace. We're at 1.499, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, double-car garage, heated pool. By the way, that includes the designer touches and furniture.
So you're putting that in there?
100%.
This is gonna, that's phenomenal.
Wow. Yeah, this painting right here came from an artist out of Tampa, and they had the artist had actually. He was given instructions by the designer to go ahead and mail the canvas down here, and the artist said no way. He was going to frame it himself because the designer said, "We'll just have it framed down here." He's like, "No, no, 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 no."
Do you mind if after this maybe we post some pictures and some content about this?
It's gorgeous.
The seller would be okay with that?
Of course, absolutely.
Well, it was amazing coming out here today. A good friend, Jonathan Keith from Compass. This is Ben Sens from Boss Construction, your South Florida permitting and code compliance specialist. Jonathan, I would hug you. I would shake your hand, but all right, talk to you guys soon.
Team JK, guys, stay safe.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.